Charting Man Dan with the chart guys. We're going to check in on the crypto space. The bears are out in full force again today. There's a noticeable pattern that when the stock market opens, crypto dumps. We'll talk about that a bit. We'll talk about the bulls only hope here in the short term as we are hitting the lowest levels in months. And we'll check in on the broader market and the NASDAQ and see where we stand in regard to that. Learn how to trade stocks, crypto, and hype sectors with a global chat room led by professional traders, as well as daily live streams at chartguys.com. All right, so Bitcoin, as we know, is weak. Let's talk a little bit about why does it seem like every time the bell rings for stocks to open, that crypto collapses. Here's the open today. Yesterday, the open was right here. Why is that happening? Well, in my opinion, and this is speculation and observation, it is that big money traders are using the ETFs as shorting vehicles. And Chart Guys members were looking at a couple statistics where you'll notice the pattern. We've seen some bull moves over the weekend, nothing huge, but we'll fade up over the weekend when that pressure is off. And then they had the statistic, I think they said something like 6 weeks in a row, all of those gains are gone by Tuesday as markets open back up again. And if you've been following these live streams for the last couple of years, I had a thesis where the ETFs are great in a bull market and you love them when they're pumping the price up, but just wait. Everybody's going to turn on these ETFs because when we are bear, they're going to drive the price down and everybody's going to hate these ETFs. And I've seen it in other sectors. Cannabis was the exact same thing. They introduced the ETF in cannabis stocks. We run 1,000% in all these names. And then bears have been utilizing that instrument for years to just absolutely crush any bullish action that sector sees. So I do believe to a certain extent that is what is going on in the crypto space. And just keep an eye on it. Just watch, what happens where let's just get it exactly. Just the last 2 days. So bell rings right here. This is your trading day. Markets close right here. This is what happens when markets are closed. And then do it all over again. Bell rings somewhere around here. So keep an eye on that pattern. When stocks are closed, it's like a little bit of pressure is released and bulls can grind up a little bit and then the bell rings and the bears jump all over it again. So in the short term, if the bulls are going to if they're going to survive in the short term, they're hoping this is a falling wedge. I drew this and posted it on Twitter maybe a week ago. And with the falling wedge, my downtrend line, it's valid here, it's valid here. This is why I don't like trading off of lines because they are too subjective trend lines. I like them as visual guides. So depending on where today's candle closes, that's where I'm going to stick this anchor point. But we'll just stick it right there for now. And of course, the downtrend lower highs are nice and clear. And that's exactly where this bounce topped out. A couple of days ago, we topped out right at this downtrending resistance line, and now we're back at the lows. So I personally don't have high conviction in this setup. If I did, I'd be looking long right now for a swing trade, but I don't like looking long in things that have glaring relative weakness, and Bitcoin has glaring relative weakness to the NASDAQ for a long time now. I like looking long things that have relative strength. And so if we just look at Bitcoin divided by the NASDAQ, we can see that we have been showing relative weakness at this point, mid-July, so 3.5 months of relative weakness, and we're down testing the weakest that we've been compared to the NASDAQ. We're close to the weakest we've been in 7 or 8 months. So, not liking that. And what we need to see here, I was just looking for a day trade bounce in Ethereum. My thesis, all right, let's zoom out. Talk about short term in just a minute. But my thesis was, okay, here's the NASDAQ. We know a NASDAQ daily lower high is the most likely result of this bounce. We had a stair-step drop. It was significant. Government shutdown headlines, a factor in that. And then we had the setup for a sell the news event. Because why? Because a daily lower high is the most likely scenario. If you give me a reopening headline down here, I'm bullish that headline. If you give it to me here, I'm bearish just because of the most likely scenario. So on Monday, indices have a big bounce, watching to see if an officially signed deal leads to the daily lower high and a tightening range into next week. So now the question is, can bulls form the daily high or low on the NASDAQ and tighten this up into an equilibrium next week? If we drop to a lower low, crypto's going to get beat up bad. If we hold, my thesis was, give me a NASDAQ daily high or low. While that's happening, Bitcoin would likely break support. But if it happens with no follow through, the falling wedge is still on the table. And give me an Ethereum daily high or low while that's happening. And we would pretty much need to see the bulls take over from this point forward if that's going to remain a possible scenario. So I'm not holding my breath. My trade that I took just a minute ago that I just stopped out of with a small loss was I was looking for Bitcoin to flush this support zone, break this support, trigger these stops. As that happens, I'm going to look long Ethereum for the oversold bounce for the daily high or low because we're still holding daily support even though Bitcoin broke. And what I needed to see, and again, why I was interested, it was more looking for a day trade to position for a potential swing trade if it worked ideally. Look at all these RSI levels in the teens. The hourly down to the 5-minute at that point in time was in the teens for Ethereum. What I needed to see happen and what didn't happen was give me a Bitcoin bear break and then a bit of a V-shaped bounce where you're triggering the stops, but bulls are jumping in at that opportunity, and then bulls buying versus with bears covering a bit leads to a bounce. That didn't happen. So as soon as that was clear that that was not happening, I sized down break even on my attempt because I laid out, this is what I want to see happen. It's not what shaped up. And that was that. So just a small loss there. And it's essentially, I'm looking for something for this NASDAQ oversold bounce. And I chose Ethereum, and it was the wrong choice. But we've got to see pretty much if my thesis is going to remain valid. NASDAQ daily high or low. Bitcoin daily falling wedge. Ethereum holding daily support. Like I said, from now into tomorrow, we need to see a 4-hour bounce shaping up. And we need to wake up tomorrow morning and have Bitcoin back over 100,000. Still going to be in a 4-hour downtrend, but that will at least keep the thesis alive. So that's the ideal bull path forward. Again, the bear path forward is the NASDAQ breaking support. That would be the first confirmed daily downtrend for the NASDAQ in 6 months. We've not confirmed a clear daily downtrend with a lower high and lower low since we bottomed with the Trump tariffs. So if that happens here, we're going to say things are different. We're going to then look for monthly consolidation. We're going to then look for seasonality to be off the table to a certain degree. And I've been a little uncomfortable with how sure thing everybody has been with seasonality. Tom Lee calling for 9,000 Ethereum or whatever he's doing. I don't love that everybody's looking in the same direction into the end of the year. Statistically speaking, seasonality this time of year is great, absolutely. I just am not comfortable when everybody's looking the same way. So bulls can still save it, but they better show up now. And then, of course, if we do get the tightening range on the NASDAQ, the direction that breaks is going to be key. But what's in the back of my head is everybody's looking one way into the end of the year, and we've got 7 green months in a row in the NASDAQ and the S&P 500. We know monthly consolidation is coming at any point. It's not going to be surprising in the slightest when it happens, and just keeping an eye out for that possibility. So personally, I've been sizing down longs a good bit, just naturally. How do you naturally size down longs? My long swing position in my stock portfolio just stopped out on this drop. I'm walking up my stops on different names, and as we get weakness, I stop out, locking in some profit on some, break even on some, and then just raising more cash naturally. So we'll see how this shapes up in the next week. It's going to be a big next week as far as dictating November, because again, if we confirm this daily downtrend and we're halfway through the month at that point, we can definitely see a red November. So show up now, bulls, and set the daily high or low in the NASDAQ and give us a Bitcoin bear break with no follow through. Otherwise, more red coming. And again, I just can't be, day trade's one thing, trying to get that Ethereum 15-minute oversold bounce. But I just can't be bullish crypto right now without proof. When I'm really confident in something like a back burner, we're trending in breakouts on all time frames, I'm buying short-term weakness, assuming it's going to form a higher low and stopping out if I'm wrong. I don't have any confidence assuming any of the bull setups in crypto right now are going to take place. So I'd rather, miss the initial move off the low and be getting in with some bull momentum. And silver's just a good example of that. Silver topped out and started consolidation. The bears then took over. And if you wait for the daily uptrend to confirm, yeah, it's late. You're off the bottom. At that point, you're off the low of consolidation. The bull break taking place, you're already up 8.5%. But from that point, in the next 2 days, you get another 8.5%. So it's giving up some of the gains to give up some of the risk by waiting for momentum to shift. And so crypto bulls need that momentum to shift. And of course, altcoins, as we know, are extremely weak. Crypto stocks are extremely weak. We'll look at those in just a moment. I'll read the chat room here in just a moment. Thanks for the likes and the shares along the way. Dominance chart. So we did lose the weekly stair step. It was a higher low every single week for months. We barely broke it. Fraction of a percent. It's not giving me any information, the dominance chart. Obviously, all coins aren't doing anything meaningful. And it's important to remind ourselves, one day doesn't mean anything. Because we have scenarios like, what was the day? Last Friday? When was it? Where all coins had a really big, strong bull day. That's great. But one day doesn't do it. Monday, all bulls are out big Monday. We had relative strength in crypto for a day. It's just not enough. Stay skeptical of bulls. I know people want bulls to do the thing. And so what often happens in trading is because you have a bias of wanting the bulls to take over, you make excuses for the bulls. Well, Bitcoin didn't break support by much, so I'm going to keep holding, or I'm going to move my stop because it barely broke. Whereas it should be the opposite. It should be, okay, the bears have had control for a couple of months at this point. Prove it, bulls. Prove to me that I should be in a long position. I'm staying skeptical. I'm being, stern, and I'm not giving bulls the benefit of the doubt. It's the bulls that have to prove to me something is shifting. And they just aren't. As far as the next support, again, we're at monthly EMA 12, another very important level for me on Bitcoin. And as far as the next support is concerned, we're at 98.2 right now. And then after that, I'm looking back at this zone. This was previous support, now resistance, or then resistance, then that's down at we'll just call it 90,000. It's a zone right around 90,000. So that's the next level I'm looking at after 98.2. And look at Ethereum. Look at Ethereum's perfect back test. So again, this was our support zone. We were looking at these trenches on Ethereum. And when it broke, I stopped out of a swing position attempt. And look at this back test. We get up within a fraction of a percent of a previous base of support. We're testing it as resistance. We're testing it as a daily lower high as the most likely scenario. We test it with shorter term RSI levels, getting overbought. Hourly RSI at that point was up in the 80s, and we fail. And so now that is a very important resistance zone. And we're heading back down to test the lows. We're just trading trenches. So again, using the World War I analogy, there's our trenches. The bears win. The bulls make an attempt to recapture their trench. They fail. The bears repel them again. And now we're back defending the bull trench that the bears are trying to overrun again. So it's hard to be confident as a bull at this point because the bears just keep proving it. ETH BTC, a little clue this morning. Resistance. So trying to confirm a daily uptrend. This morning we got right up to resistance. Fail, hard rejection, just like back here. Just a hard rejection. Roll over. Hard rejection, roll over. So ETH BTC has been struggling to gain any ground as well. Crypto stocks, we had a period there where, we were looking good in names like Riot, CLSK. They just fell off a cliff. I was looking for weekly higher lows here. Bitcoin bulls didn't show anything to have me interested in those weekly higher lows, and we just gave it all back. The names that have been holding on better, like IREN and CIFR, they've clearly put in a top. It's not nearly as meaningful a dump, but it's pretty significant. I mean, CIFR from the high, we're down 42%. There's no sign of the bulls anywhere in anything crypto related. And we know that can change quickly. We don't just write them off and say, that's it, game over. But again, we just have to look at the information that's staring us in the face and admit that it doesn't look good at all. And it can change. But it has to change because if it doesn't, it's going to stay bearish. BMNR back to testing lows. MSTR, I've been bear on that for a long time. Just the nail for MSTR was the inability. Again, same concept. There's your base of support. Fail, fail, fail. Bears win. Wish I had better news. I wish I was the bull influencer that's going to hop on here and tell you the turnaround is right around the corner and we're about to moon. I've had to just be muting people. Nothing against the people that are, if you're resharing a chart that has a Doge chart going to $1 with a green line, I'm unfollowing you and I'm muting you. There's just absolutely nothing aside from hopium that can lead to that being a conclusion of the most likely scenario of where price is going. Altcoins like XRP, still lower highs of resistance. So we topped out initially on the bounce, 270. We're in a weekly downtrend as our guide. Just look at the little weekly lower highs. Lower high, lower high, lower high, lower high, and maybe shaping up another one. So it's just been a clear downtrend. And again, all of this happening in the face of a very strong broader market. The NASDAQ just hit all-time highs a couple weeks ago. It's just not looking good. As far as my long-term no-touch positions, I will sit through another bear market at this point. I sold 15, 20%. And that's good enough for me. I think I talked about that a lot last stream in terms of, whether those positions are double from here or zero from here. It's not going to affect my life in any way. So I'm okay sitting. I've sat through multiple bear markets and, this is going to be my 20-year position. That's fine, whatever. Took a little bit of profit so I can psychologically feel better about it if it is about to be another bear market. But that's where I stand with regards to the long-term mindset. All right, reading the chat now. Let's check. We know ZEC has been strong. It's putting in a temporary top. So we had a little lower high, lower low. So watching for weekly consolidation now, still a stair step, but again, a little bit of a shift underway. Sol. Again, perfect example, just like Ethereum. Support, 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 support. There's your bounce. You reject right from it and drop to lower lows. Sol has now given back 5 months. I'm just viewing this as a long-term tightening range. Bulls are hoping to hold 95 to give us something like this. But again, for me, all of this stuff is just reliant on the NASDAQ continuing a melt up. I don't see a scenario where the NASDAQ sees monthly consolidation and crypto goes inverse to that. So it's almost like we have to see, how many times has the NASDAQ futures chart seen 8 green months in a row? It's not often. And so you need that to happen if things are going to turn around in the short term, in my opinion. Hey, Andres. Yeah, I was on vacation. I usually stream on Tuesdays. So I was out of town. So that's why we're streaming on a Thursday. Bad move, should have listened to you and go to stock. So again, we always make mistakes and we just have to learn from them and then not repeat them. That's the whole thing. I was going to short quantum stocks aggressively. I took a fat loss because I was a few days early. Took a fat loss here because I was positioning here. And of course, it would have worked out wonderfully, but got to protect things in a short squeeze. And so I learned lessons. Again, I'm 15 years in, constantly still learning lessons. Okay, wait for the top to be hit. You don't have to nail the top. You can size up on the downside when momentum is in your favor. It's just the exact thing that I just said about waiting for the bulls to do something. You miss the first 8.5%, but you get the second 8.5%. It's just flip to a bear. And I got to burn that into my brain because that was my big mistake. Biggest mistake of 2025, being a couple days too early on the top that I knew was coming in quantum. And so the lessons that you're all learning in crypto, apply them. The reason that I haven't been losing money trading alts, the reason I haven't been trading alts in 2025 is because I have learned the lessons in the past. Honestly, the penny stock market has been giving me tons of lessons in crypto that I've applied to crypto my entire 9 years of trading crypto, 8 years. So don't get down on yourself about making the mistakes. Get down on yourself if you keep repeating them, sure. But mistakes are valuable. If I make a $10,000 mistake, let's use real numbers. I made mistakes that cost me a few $1,000s 10 years ago. And because I made those mistakes, they prevented me from losing tens of thousands of dollars 10 years later. Any hope for cannabis? Not without a headline. Yeah, I mean, you gotta think of people's incentives. Tom Lee's obviously going to give bullish. He has his entire, with his positioning in BMNR, it would make absolutely no, he's never going to come on and be bearish. I like Tom Lee for his thoughts on retail traders versus institutions, the evolving markets with technology. Being bullish in a bull market works out real well. I don't like price targets from anybody. Anybody. Price targets to me are the least valuable thing of any information that I read on the internet. Metals are still very strong. People asking about a potential double top in silver to look. I mean, we're just going to look for a daily higher. It's possible metals tighten up on the weekly for a while. You know, we could trade within this range for another 3 weeks. That's possible. We're going to go to the 2-day time frame. Gold can easily do this into the end of November. But again, it's just grasping for straws. Maybe if the metals roll over, it'll help crypto. And I've talked plenty about the inverse relationship. It's definitely there in my opinion, but the metals are clearly still strong. If gold were to close right here, it would have only closed higher maybe 7 days in history. We just need a NASDAQ daily high or low, the tightening range to break bull, a new all-time high, and a continued melt up. I mean, if that doesn't happen, we're going to see further monthly consolidation, further retracement, further despair. Is crypto now in a bear market? I don't like the definition of a bear market just being down 20%. For me, a confirmed monthly downtrend is a great guide for a bear market. Same thing with the NASDAQ and the S&P 500. We just get these flushes that are big and meaningful, but if you can't confirm the downtrend, there's no follow through to being a bear market. 2022 was a monthly downtrend. So for me, if I'm going to give up on Ethereum and Bitcoin, it would be if Ethereum sets a monthly high or low, somewhere in the 2000s, then sets a lower high and then confirm the monthly downtrend. Then it's a big double top. And that's why I care a lot about Bitcoin's monthly EMA 12, because if we lose that, if we hold it, continuation, hold it, continuation, lose it, then we've got the space for a monthly lower high. And just one more note on that falling wedge, potential falling wedge, that is how we bottomed the last time we were at monthly EMA 12. This is going to be a bit sloppy, but this was a falling wedge. So you had a bear break. So fresh low, straight into a bounce. Fresh low, straight into a bounce. That's the hallmark of a falling wedge. Here, fresh low, straight into a bounce. Fresh low, you got to go straight into a bounce. That's why into tomorrow, into the weekend, we've got to put a couple green days together here if it's going to stay a possibility. It was a daily falling wedge off of monthly EMA 12 that set the longer-term higher low at 74,000. And that's what bulls have to pull off here again. What's up, David? Bull or bear, what's the instrument to play? If you're swing trading, you want 24-hour control. So you're trading crypto itself. You have to deal with the fees. You're paying the fees to be able to have 24-hour control. If you're day trading, my day trade attempt today was ETHA. Because if I didn't use ETHA, I'd be paying $1,000 in fees. So I will always choose the stock or ETF due to the fees when I can. But again, you're then giving up control for 16 hours of the day or whatever it is, 14 hours. So that's a trade-off. Eventually, there'll be 24-hour markets in stocks. It's coming soon, within the next few years. And so you can trade the ETFs 24 hours, and then that'll be the place to be. I don't hate MSTR. I've just been listening to the chart, right? I've been listening to what the chart has told me. The chart told me that this was very likely a climax and very likely a premium climax, which it was. And then what I just showed you has been telling me the bears have full control. If bulls got back over this zone here and turn it into support, I'm bullish MSTR. But I'm just listening to what the chart is telling me. I don't care if MSTR goes up or down. I hope it goes up for all you people to make money. But, When I'm looking at this chart to analyze it, I don't care if it goes up or down, and that helps me have an unbiased read on it. So with it being oversold, I like oversold conditions for two things. Number one, climax. Give me a super stack where you're so beat up on all these time frames, and we're close to getting there. I would want the daily to be a bit more oversold. Give me a daily super stack where we're at extremes on the daily, the 12-hour, the 4-hour, the hourly, on down the line. Then I'm interested in a bounce. But the only times I'm interested in oversold conditions are when it aligns with the longer-term most likely scenario. You're in a weekly and daily uptrend. Hourly oversold, I'm interested for the daily high or low. But in something like this, when you're in a monthly, weekly, daily downtrend, oversold matters way less to me because it doesn't align with a most likely scenario. Daily oversold for a monthly high or low. That's a thing. Semiconductors did that. Back here to 2024, SMH semiconductors. This was a daily back burner from all-time highs. That's the monthly high or low into blue sky breakout continuation. Then I care about it. Monthly high or low is the most likely scenario. If we're going to stay real strong, daily oversold is going to market. But once you're in a downtrend on all these time frames like MSTR is, you don't have the most likely scenario aligning with oversold conditions. And I just have much less interest in it. And, you'll see traders dog on or talk smack about RSI and oversold. And that's just because they're viewing it. They're not compartmentalizing setup by setup. They're just saying, RSI hits 30. I've seen tons of times where that works and tons of times where that doesn't work. That's not a meaningful signal. It's all context. The back burners when your blue sky breakout are going to be hugely high probability. And if you're in a monthly and a weekly, daily downtrend, they're not going to work at all. So if you're viewing those as the same, it's the completely wrong way to be approaching markets. The context dictates everything about the indicators that I use, the weight that I put into those indicators, or whether or not they matter to me. Welcome aboard, Lauzek. Is Sol a giant head and shoulders? I don't think so. I think it's more at tightening range. I mean, I see what you're looking at. Generally speaking, the NASDAQ 4-hour was a head and shoulders. So a number of things. Number one, I prefer when my head and shoulders confirming is breaking the uptrend. I want my right neckline higher than the left neckline. They're both head and shoulders, but again, context. I like one version of a head and shoulders better for a better probability versus the other. So here we already lose supports. We stop things out. We stop out bulls from here. I want this to be the high or low like the NASDAQ gave us on the 4-hour. So it's still a 4-hour uptrend. Again, why do I care about a 4-hour head and shoulders? A daily lower high is the most likely scenario. I've got a shorter term bearish pattern that's nested within a longer term most likely scenario. And so we had a support level here, we held it here, and we held it here. There are now a wall of stops at that zone. If we had broken those supports and then bounced and then rolled over, I wouldn't expect as much follow through because we had already knocked out those stops. But if you're going to knock out all the stops at the same time, it's a more forceful, powerful move, and you can anticipate there's going to be more follow through. So I prefer the right neckline higher than the left. All that said, could Sol be a head and shoulders? Yeah, it could be. Because of this bounce retracement size, I favor holding this low and tightening up as the more likely scenario. If this bounce retracement was 50% or less, I would favor the bear break more Because if that's the case, the bulls have less space to work with. It's easier to break. If you bounce all the way up here, you're giving yourself a lot of space to work with to try and maintain support and tighten up. Let's check back in on the NASDAQ real quick. Are we bouncing yet? Trying. Got to break that bounce high. So I've just been watching 15-minute EMA 12, and the downtrend is my full bear control guide, and things are trying to shift here into the end of the day. Got to get over 609.25. Again, Bitcoin's just going to be dictated by the NASDAQ as long as it's trading. Why? Because there are tons of automated trading systems that part of their code or whatever is look at what the NASDAQ is doing. They're intertwined. And so as soon as the bell rings, those bots are then shut down for the day. And that's why it seems like some pressure is alleviated. And as soon as the bell rings, the weight is back on because the bots and the algos link right back up. Would I bail on Bitcoin if up and green still? So ideally, you need to know that question before you ever enter the position, because otherwise you are opening the door to say, I'm going to make a decision when my emotions are heightened, whether it's euphoria or fear. The whole point of establishing your game plan before you ever click the buy button is so that it's with a level head and you're not letting emotions come into play at all. And you're just following a very clear checklist. If this breaks, then I'm out. So I mean, at this point, I don't know where your entry is. I don't know anything about the trade. I know personally, I'd be giving it a chance to see if this is a bear break, no follow through with a bounce tomorrow into the weekend, knowing that the NASDAQ needs that daily high or low. Do I ever put on hedges for no touch long crypto? Broader market hedges, SQQQ. I know what my long exposure is in both my IRA stocks and in my long-term no touch crypto. I can definitely do a better job at it. Maybe that's a goal that I should improve upon from here next year. Again, we always want goals. There's always something to be improving upon. I've been improving upon my swing trading. I've been improving upon my bear swing trading. Maybe that's part of it. I do need to get better at hedging. I should be short Bitcoin right now, and I'm not. Plenty of chances to take a stab at it. You definitely, so careful predicting candle patterns before they happen. Definitely, that's sound advice. But you develop a thesis. If this is going to be a daily falling wedge, then this bear break should see a lack of follow through into a bounce. Then if I see the bounce begin tomorrow through the weekend, I then get more confident that it's a daily falling wedge. So I'm not here, unless I have a high conviction, I'm not buying, assuming it's going to be this pattern. I'm laying out the criteria of if it's going to be an ideal setup, if I'm going to have confidence in the most likely scenario, this needs to happen. If it doesn't happen, then I don't have any confidence. And if it does, then I can look to set up the trade. So I'd say that's a preliminary scouting before developing an actual trade thesis with actual levels. We passed 100 likes without me having to be mad at you. Thanks. CRCL, monthly support, gone. I played this monthly high or low, and I stopped out. with a small win. And the reason I stopped out is it was a rising wedge. Bull break, straight into a pullback. Bull break, zero follow through, choppy. There's your red flag right there. That volume and that candle, that's probably the day I stopped out. Because I was looking for a monthly equilibrium. And as soon as the daily bounce looked like that, then the bear flag's on the table for the monthly. And so now it's just all-time lows. Man, remember this name when, wow, look at this sentiment. It's just so fascinating. People buying at any price and now nobody wants it. So we're just looking at the all-time low. That's the only support, $64. We've got a clear monthly, weekly, daily downtrend as our guide. And again, we just got to keep the context in mind. Any name that is in a monthly, weekly, daily downtrend while the NASDAQ is in a monthly, weekly, daily uptrend is just positioned so poorly. Even if the NASDAQ just sees healthy monthly consolidation, let's say the NASDAQ retraces a third of the Trump tariff dump for a monthly higher low. That still means we drop another 8%. So any name that's in a monthly, weekly, daily downtrend and we drop 8% and the NASDAQ is going to get beat up. So I'm always keeping that context in the back of my mind. The word of today's video is context of what's the broader market doing. You know, if the broader market was in a monthly, weekly, daily downtrend, okay, that's one thing. And these names, you know, circle just following it. That is not the case. It's just full bear control. Give me a reason, bulls. Give me a reason to give you my money to be in a position in CRCL. And being weak is not a good enough reason. You know, being oversold is not a good enough reason because we don't have a scenario where an oversold time frame aligns with a higher low on a longer term time frame. As soon as you're in a monthly, weekly, daily downtrend, that's off the table. Didn't get a haircut. When to sell in a loss. Again, the lesson, if that's the question, the lesson is you know that before you ever buy anything. And we all have to go through that lesson of losing a bunch of money by not having stop losses. I'm reading the Market Wizard books right now. The vast majority of professional traders, let's say 90%, use stop losses on every single trade. It's like one of the hallmarks. One of the questions is, what is your main takeaway? Stop on every trade, risk management. If 90% of people fail and 90% of the people that make it are all telling you the same thing, you've got to emulate what they're doing. You've got to do that same thing to have any chance. So you got to pick a level and say, if it hits this level, then I am out. Whether that's the dollar amount, I'm willing to lose this much before admitting I'm wrong. Or if this level breaks and we confirm the weekly downtrend, then I was wrong about a monthly uptrend. Whatever the thesis is, you have to develop that in advance before you ever buy anything. And this is your lesson. And now you'll never do that again. I did it 2010, 11, 12. I was doing it. And I reached a point where I felt sick to my stomach and my morning was ruined when I woke up and first thing I thought about my loss, that happened to be enough, where I said, I'm never going to let this happen again. If I just enact these rules, I never have to feel this way again. No Tesla. Clear bear break. We had a sideways channel. Bears had a huge win today. Advice, how to start thinking in probability. So again, I always say trading is a lifestyle. I think about everything in probabilities. I don't go next to cliff ledges. You know, on a hike, wherever I am, I don't go next to a cliff ledge because in that moment, it will be the highest probability that I'm going to die out of anything in the last few years. What if I get lightheaded? What if I stumble? What if one of 100 things? I don't ever, if it's just a fall where I'll break my leg, sure, I'll go to the edge. But if it's death, certain death, if I go 6 inches further, I'm going nowhere near that ledge. I live my entire life in probabilities. So I'd say that's one way to start. Start thinking about everything in probabilities. And it also comes with being humbled by the markets. I have no idea what's going to happen. I know what's most likely to happen based on 1,000 patterns that I've watched play out in real time. But I don't actually know. Again, just back to the poker analogy, you've got pocket aces pre-market. The dude's all in. You're going to call. You're likely to win. You don't know if you're going to win. Every poker player has had their gut kicked in by the best hand losing, and you wouldn't do anything different. You would still go all in the next time around, even though you just lost, because you know the probabilities are in your favor. So it's letting go of thinking you know anything about the direction the market's going to go. And that comes from a bunch of losing. And then you develop the mindset, okay, we're likely to go up from here, but we could very easily not. I want to see quantum gap down tomorrow to be interested in playing a bounce. Oh, we got a nice bounce, decent bounce into the end of the day. IONQ. I played a little IONQ bounce this afternoon. I wanted to gap down. Then I looked to play some extremes, day trade position, keep a swing runner. That's my style. Thanks, Anon. Bitcoin behaves differently since the ETFs, absolutely. I highlighted a bit how first thing in the stream. It's definitely different. And the more liquidity there is, the less volatility there's going to be. I just see... people like to say it's not correlated to the NASDAQ. It blows my mind. I don't know how you can say that. Again, I'm watching it every day. I guess if you just zoom out and include the 2010 to 2016 years, I don't know. I don't know how. I don't see how. It's almost like you just get absorbed to the monster that is financial markets. Like, oh, suck you into this intertwined web of everything correlated to everything because of automated bots and systems. And you now are in this web. And you are a part of the system. And I just don't see how we just don't do what the NASDAQ does to varying degrees. Stronger in strength sometimes, weaker in weakness sometimes. But, are we ever going to see Bitcoin? If ever there was going to be a time to break from correlation, it would be with the headlines we've been getting, with the Trump presidency and all the bullish stuff that's been going on. The headlines would be the breaker of the correlation, but that obviously hasn't happened. So it's hard to imagine what's a scenario now from here where the NASDAQ is pulling back for months and Bitcoin's going up for months. What would it take for that to happen? And it's hard for me to think of scenarios where that would be taking place. Oh, what a shame that end result would be, where it's just now part of the system and it's just a different version of the NASDAQ doing that thing. It started, birthed from Occupy Wall Street, escaped the system. How depressing would that be? At least it made a bunch of early people wealthy and helped them break free of the web. All right, got to wrap it up here. Yeah, that's fine. Trading options, if your position's all or zero, that's a stop loss. Your position size is your stop loss. Did ETH already? All right, last one, BCH. Haven't looked at this one in a while. There was relative strength, but I remember looking at it when it looked like it was about to fade. And it was BCH, BTC. What were we looking for? A monthly lower high? All in all, I mean, last time I was talking about it, it probably was looking for the monthly lower high. And we said it, but all in all, that's fine. Let's go 2-week time frame. Condense it down. It'd be a great sign if that breaks bull. Look at this EMA 12 rider. So I did that webinar. Google EMA 12 rider chart, guys. But look at the 2-week EMA 12. Resistance, resistance. This is BCH, BTC. Resistance, resistance. You get above it. Support, barely hanging on, but still holding it as support. That's a good sign. If you can get over that high, that's a great sign. Bigger picture, monthly. So again, we can draw our trenches. Support trench. We got a little shorter term resistance trench before we look up at 720. Monthly high or low is the most likely scenario for me. Anything over 249. If Bitcoin can hold monthly EMA 12, BCH position fairly well and need BCH BTC to break that 2-week resistance to keep its recovery going. I mean, considering comparative to all other alts, as we know, there's only a handful, a few that are bulls. And this one is definitely holding up way better than most. Yeah, we'll have Black Friday offerings coming up, probably end of next week, a week from now, probably. Discounts on pretty much everything. There'll be plenty of info on that when the time is right. Thanks again, everybody, for the likes and the shares. Again, it's not fun being a bull in crypto right now. We've got a path forward. All these things have to happen if things are going to shift in the short term. It's not an easy path forward. And it's probably not even the most likely path forward. But that's what we're keeping an eye on. I'm not buying any positions based off of it. I don't have enough conviction. Also not trying to nail a relatively weaker asset, trying to nail its bottom. That's usually a losing venture. But again, there's lessons that we can learn. And the game of finance and markets is a lifelong game of 20, 30, 50 years. And so if we can apply lessons that we're learning in our first decade, it can still benefit us later down the line. That's the takeaway. That's the bright side if 2025 has been rough and red for you. Write it down. Get a Dear Diary and write down your lessons and the mistakes you are not going to repeat. And you've repeated them in year 4 of trading, year 3, and you're going to, even if you back off trading and now you're just investing and managing long term, these are the things that I did year 1, 2, 3, 4, and that I never did again, year 15, 20, 25. There will be more opportunities in different sectors, anti-gravity stocks, live forever biotech companies. As long as the world and society is not collapsing, there will be massive opportunities in markets, periods where there's no opportunities, periods where there's massive opportunities. Preserve your capital, accrue capital, and wait for the opportunities. And then strike and do good things.